We've been lied to about how millionaires actually live. We've been conditioned to look for the flash, the high-end labels, the luxury leases, and the loud displays of making it. But the reality of American wealth is far quieter and much weirder than we were ever told. Most of us are currently trapped in a high-speed performance, spending money we haven't even earned yet to maintain an image of success that is actually keeping us poor. You feel that quiet, persistent exhaustion every time you try to keep up, don't you? It's the cost of a lifestyle that looks rich but feels fragile. The truth is, while we're busy playing the part, the person who actually has the $1 million net worth is likely the neighbor you've been overlooking for years. They've mastered a way of existing that most people will never understand, a way of living that trades the applause of strangers for something much deeper. But if you don't learn to see the world through their lens, you'll stay stuck on a treadmill that was never meant to lead to freedom. So, let's begin. You've probably seen them at the grocery store. Maybe they were the ones checking the price per ounce on the generic peanut butter, or the person in the faded fleece jacket waiting patiently for their turn at the deli counter. You didn't give them a second look. Why would you? There was nothing to see. No flash, no statement pieces, no aura of importance that demanded the room's attention. And that is exactly the point. We've been sold this vibrant, high-definition lie about what a millionaire looks like. We think of the velvet ropes, the Italian leather, the watches that cost more than a mid-sized sedan. We've been conditioned to believe that wealth is a performance. If you have it, you show it. If you're winning, you wear the trophy. But in Thomas J. Stanley's world, the real world of American wealth, those people are often just high-income spenders. They're asphalt millionaires. They have the look, but they don't have the foundation. The people who actually own the bank? They're invisible. They are masters of the art of being ordinary. There's a specific kind of quietness to real wealth that almost feels like a secret language. It's the guy living in the same 3-bedroom ranch house he bought in 1984. It's the woman who's been driving the same reliable, well-maintained SUV for a decade. They don't look like they're winning the game because they aren't playing the version of the game we see on social media. They've realized something deeply uncomfortable for most of us, that society is remarkably bad at identifying who is actually rich. We look for cues. We look for the big hat. But as the old Texas saying goes, there are a lot of people with big hats and no cattle. They've got the status symbols, sure, but their balance sheet is a ghost town. They are running a marathon on a treadmill, moving fast, looking exhausted, but ultimately staying in the exact same place. The invisible millionaires, they're different. They don't need your recognition to validate their net worth. Think about that for a second. Think about the psychological freedom of not needing to be seen. Most of us spend a staggering amount of emotional energy trying to signal to strangers that we are doing well. We buy the right shoes. We mention the right vacation. We ensure our car fits the neighborhood's unspoken standard. It's a tax we pay to belong. But the truly wealthy? They've opted out. They aren't trying to be minimalists in some trendy, curated way. It's simpler than that. They just don't see the point in performing for an audience that doesn't matter. They understand that every dollar spent on an image is a dollar that stops working for them. It's a trade-off they aren't willing to make. There's a quote in the book that hits like a cold glass of water. Wealth is more often the result of a lifestyle of hard work, perseverance, planning, and most of all, self-discipline. In plain English, it means that building a fortune isn't about the one big win or the lucky strike. It's about the boring stuff. It's about being the person who chooses the unglamorous path every single Tuesday for 30 years. It's the discipline to stay invisible when every instinct in our culture tells you to scream your success from the rooftops. We tend to mock the boring. We find it dull. We see the person living a modest life and we assume they're struggling, or at the very least, that they're missing out. We pity the millionaire who doesn't act like one. But who is really missing out? The person who owns the luxury car but wakes up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat about their debt? Or the person in the 10-year-old Toyota who sleeps like a baby because they could stop working tomorrow and be fine for the next 2 decades? It's a strange irony. We spend our lives chasing the feeling of being rich, which usually involves spending money, while the people who are actually rich are busy being incredibly disciplined about keeping it. They are the neighbors you never suspected, the ones who don't fit the script. They've traded the temporary thrill of being admired for the permanent comfort of being secure. And once you start looking for them, once you stop looking for the big hat, you realize they are everywhere. They're just waiting for the rest of us to finish our performance. It makes you wonder, though, if they aren't spending their money on the things we've been told make life worth living. What are they doing with it? If it's not for the show, then what is it for? Because for them, the math of life looks a lot different than the one we were taught in school. It's for something much quieter and much more permanent than the applause of people they don't even particularly like. You see, for the invisible millionaire, the math of life isn't about what they're giving up. It's about what they're gaining. We tend to look at someone who earns a high income but lives in a modest house and think, why are they punishing themselves? We see the older car or the lack of designer labels as a form of deprivation, a sacrifice. But they don't see it that way at all. To them, frugality isn't a diet. It's not a temporary season of doing without until they can finally afford to splurge. It's just the way the world makes sense. It's the baseline. There is a massive difference between being cheap and being frugal. A cheap person tries to pay the least amount of money for everything. A frugal person, however, is simply determined to get the most life out of every dollar. They aren't looking to suffer, they're looking to be efficient. They've realized that the good life sold in commercials is actually a very expensive trap. It's a treadmill designed to keep you running just to stay in the same place. If you get a raise and immediately upgrade the car, you haven't actually moved forward. You've just increased the speed of the treadmill. The millionaires Stanley studied, they hopped off the treadmill decades ago. They live on a fraction of what they earn, not because they're hoarding gold like a dragon in a cave, but because they've found a strange, secret joy in the gap. The gap between what you could spend and what you do spend. That gap is where the air is. That's where the freedom lives. When you spend less than you make, consistently, almost boringly, you stop being a servant to your bills. You start to own your own mornings. There's a profound, quiet wit in the person who wears a $10 t-shirt while owning a 7-figure portfolio. The irony is delicious, isn't it? They have the means to buy the whole store, which is exactly why they don't feel the need to buy anything in it. The book points out that most of these people are compulsive savers. Now, when we hear the word compulsive, we usually think of something negative, a tic, a flaw. But in this context, it's a superpower. It means they've automated the habit of choosing their future self over their current impulse. Stanley puts it simply. They believe that financial independence is more important than displaying high social status. In plain English, they'd rather be rich than look rich. It sounds so obvious when you say it out loud, doesn't it? And yet, look around. Our entire economy is practically fueled by people doing the exact opposite. We are surrounded by people who are drowning in debt just to maintain the illusion of wealth. We buy things we don't need, with money we don't have, to impress people we don't know. It's a form of collective insanity that the millionaire next door just ignores. They'll go to the same barber for 30 years. They'll clip coupons for the things they were going to buy anyway. Not because they need the $5, but because wasting $5 feels like a betrayal of the effort it took to earn it. They respect money too much to throw it away on nonsense. There's a quiet dignity in that kind of restraint. It's the realization that stuff has a very short shelf life for happiness. The new car smell fades in about 8 weeks. The thrill of the designer bag lasts until the next season's collection comes out. But the feeling of having a sleep at night fund, the feeling of knowing that no matter what happens to the economy or your boss's mood, you are okay, that never fades. That's a luxury that doesn't go out of style. They aren't living small lives. They're living big lives inside small overheads. They have hobbies, they travel, they take care of their families, but they do it with a level of intentionality that is almost invisible to the casual observer. They've figured out that the most expensive thing you can buy is the appearance of success. It costs you your peace, it costs you your time, and eventually it costs you your freedom. So they choose the other path. They choose the generic brand, the reliable sedan, and the modest neighborhood. They choose the peace of the gap. And as the years go by, that gap turns into a mountain of security that allows them to move through the world with a confidence that no luxury brand could ever provide. But it's not just about the money itself. It's about what that money represents. It's about the currency of life that most of us are spending without even realizing it. Because every time they choose not to buy a status symbol, they aren't just saving cash. They're saving something much more precious. Something that, once it's gone, you can never really buy back. They're saving their time and the very limited energy they have to navigate this life. When you look at a millionaire, the real kind, the one who doesn't post their breakfast on Instagram, you're looking at someone who is remarkably protective of their calendar. Most of us spend our time trying to earn money so we can buy things that ultimately end up stealing more of our time. It's a strange, cyclical tragedy. We buy a house that's too big, so we have to spend our weekends cleaning it, or working extra hours to pay the person who cleans it. We buy a high-maintenance car that requires specialized service and a specific kind of attention. We think we're buying the good life, but often we're just buying a list of chores. The wealthy people Stanley studied understand that time is the only truly non-renewable resource. You can always make another million, but you can't claw back the Tuesday you spent arguing with a service department or the hours you spent researching a watch just to make sure it's the right one for your social circle. They don't chase status because status is, quite frankly, exhausting. Think about the mental bandwidth required to stay current. To know which neighborhood is trending, which brands are slipping, which social cues need to be hit to prove you belong to a certain tier of success. It's a full-time job that pays $0 and costs you your soul. The invisible millionaire looks at that trade-off and just smiles. They'd rather spend that energy elsewhere. They spend it on planning. They spend it on looking at their investments. They spend it on their families. The book highlights a fascinating contrast. The people who are actually wealthy spend significantly more time planning their financial future than the people who just look wealthy. While the asphalt millionaire is busy spending time to look the part, the actual millionaire is spending time making sure the part is real. There's a quiet, self-aware humor in it. While the world is shouting for attention, they are sitting in a quiet room, looking at a spreadsheet or a book, or just staring out the window completely unbothered by the fact that nobody knows who they are. They've realized that being important is a massive drain on your efficiency. If you're important, you have to be somewhere. You have to look a certain way. You have to fulfill expectations. If you're just a regular person with a secret 7-figure brokerage account, you can do whatever you want. You have the ultimate luxury, the power to be ignored. Stanley notes that wealthy people tend to live in homes and neighborhoods where their neighbors are not prone to high consumption lifestyles. In plain English, they stay away from the Joneses. They know that humans are social creatures, and if we live in a neighborhood where everyone gets a new European sedan every 2 years, we're going to start thinking that's normal. We're going to start feeling that quiet, itchy pressure to keep up. So they choose to live in neighborhoods where the pressure doesn't exist. They protect their energy by removing the temptation to compare. They understand that the easiest way to win a game of status chicken is to simply not show up at the track. It's about optimization. They optimize for freedom, not for admiration. Admiration is a fickle, thin thing. It requires constant maintenance. But freedom? Freedom is solid. Freedom is the ability to say no to a promotion that would double your stress, but triple your commute. Freedom is the ability to spend a Wednesday afternoon at your kid's school play without asking for permission. Most people are income rich, but time poor. They are stuck in a high-status cage. The millionaire next door. They might be income modest in appearance, but they are time wealthy. And they guard that time like a hawk. They don't waste hours trying to find a deal on a luxury item they don't need. They don't spend their energy managing the logistics of an oversized life. They keep their life small so their world can be big. It's a different kind of ambition. It's not the ambition to be more than others. It's the ambition to be himself or herself without the interference of a mounting pile of liabilities. Because they know that every shiny thing you own eventually owns a little piece of you. Every status symbol is a tiny anchor. And they'd much rather be light. They'd rather be able to move, to pivot, to breathe. They know that the most valuable thing money can buy isn't something you can park in your driveway or wear on your wrist. It's the ability to look at a beautiful, sunny afternoon and realize that your time actually belongs to you. Even if the car you use to drive into that afternoon is the most boring thing on the road, which leads to a truth that most of us spend our entire lives trying to outrun. And that truth is that the things we display to prove we've made it are often the very things that prevent us from ever actually getting there. It's a cruel irony, isn't it? We buy the badge of success, but the cost of the badge is the success itself. In the world of the millionaire next door, there is a very sharp, very cold distinction between a lifestyle and a net worth. Most of what we see on our commute or in our social feeds is just high-volume consumption. It's a flow of money, not a reservoir. And the problem with a flow is that if the faucet ever turns off, even just for a second, the whole garden dies. Stanley's research into what the wealthy actually drive is perhaps the most famous ego check in financial history. You'd expect the data to be full of Italian names and German engineering. You'd expect the parking lots of the wealthy to look like a high-end showroom. But it's mostly just Fords, Toyotas, Hondas. The most common car for a millionaire isn't a supercar. It's a late model, reliable, domestic truck or sedan. Why? Because a car is a tool for transportation, not a psychological therapy session. They see a vehicle for what it actually is, a rapidly depreciating hunk of metal and plastic that loses value every time you sneeze. To a millionaire, spending $80,000 on a status vehicle isn't just spending $80,000. It's a mathematical tragedy. They see the opportunity cost. They see the $500,000 that money could have become if it had been left alone to grow in a quiet index fund. They look at a luxury lease and see a leak in the boat. And it's not just cars. It's the watches. It's the suits. It's the brand name life. There's a quiet, understated wit in the way a truly wealthy person shops. They aren't looking for the label that says, "I'm rich." They're looking for the quality that says, "I won't have to buy this again for 10 years." They buy for utility, for durability, and, honestly, for the sheer joy of not having to think about it anymore. When you buy a status item, you aren't just paying for the object. You're paying for the maintenance of the image. If you have the expensive car, you need the expensive car wash. You need the premium fuel. You need the high-end insurance. You've basically invited a very demanding, very hungry guest to live in your garage, and it expects to be fed every single month. Stanley found that the majority of millionaires have never spent more than $400 on a suit. In plain English, they don't need the fabric to do the talking for them. There's a certain kind of consumption fever that hits people when they start making a little bit of money. We feel like we need to upgrade. Our house needs to match our title. Our watch needs to match our peer group. We call it lifestyle creep, but it's more like lifestyle strangulation. The millionaire next door stays immune to the fever. They know that visible consumption is a financial liability. It's a signal to the world to come and take a bite of what you have. It signals to the taxman, to the salesperson, to the neighbor, and to the relative that you have excess. By staying invisible, by driving the used car and wearing the old watch, they keep the world at arm's length. They protect their peace. There's a funny kind of freedom in being underestimated. When people look at you and assume you're just doing okay, they leave you alone. They don't expect you to pick up every check. They don't pitch you once-in-a-lifetime investment schemes. You get to move through the world with a level of privacy that the high-consumption crowd can only dream of. They've realized that the most expensive things in life are the ones we buy to impress people we don't even like. It's a heavy realization. How many years of our lives have we traded away to pay for symbols? How many hours of stress have we endured to maintain a look that doesn't actually provide any lasting comfort? The millionaire next door isn't being cheap when they drive that old truck. They're being protective. They're guarding the harvest. They know that wealth is what you don't see. It's the money that stays in the account. It's the assets that grow while you're sleeping. Everything else is just a distraction. But there's another layer to this protection. It's not just about guarding the money from the car dealership or the department store. Sometimes, the greatest threat to wealth isn't a purchase at all. It's a phone call or a knock at the door. Because once you've built that quiet mountain of security, the hardest part isn't keeping it from yourself. It's knowing when to say no to the people you love, which brings us to the final, and perhaps most difficult, boundary of all. It's knowing when to say no to the people you love, even when your heart and your bank account are screaming at you to say yes. There is a quiet, heavy chapter in the life of every invisible millionaire that usually goes unrecorded. It's the moment they realize that their wealth isn't just a financial asset, it's a social boundary. Stanley talks about a concept called economic outpatient care, which is a clinical way of describing a very human, very messy reality. The habit of wealthy parents subsidizing the lifestyles of their adult children. On the surface, it looks like kindness. It looks like a father helping his daughter buy a house in a better neighborhood, or a mother covering the credit card debt of a son who's just going through a rough patch. But underneath the generosity, there's a subtle, corrosive irony at play. By giving their children the things they never had, these self-made millionaires often accidentally rob their children of the very thing that made them successful in the first place, the necessity of struggle. The millionaire next door didn't get there because things were easy. They got there because they had to be disciplined. They had to be frugal. They had to learn how to survive the lean years. When you provide a safety net that feels more like a hammock, you aren't just giving money, you're taking away the drive to build. There's a bit of dark humor in it if you look closely. You have these parents who drive 10-year-old sedans and shop at discount warehouses, while their adult children, funded by gifts, are driving brand new SUVs and living in zip codes they haven't earned. It's a transfer of wealth that often leads to a transfer of weakness. The truly wealthy, the ones who stay wealthy, eventually have to learn a very difficult type of love. They have to learn that the best thing they can give their family isn't a check, it's a boundary. They realize that if they become the family bank, they aren't just managing money anymore, they're managing dependencies. They're creating a cycle where the next generation never learns the logic of the modest life because they've never been forced to live it. It's the ultimate test of the invisible millionaires philosophy. It's one thing to say no to a luxury car at a dealership. It's quite another to say no to a child who wants to keep up with their peers. But as you zoom out and look at the whole landscape of this life, from the generic peanut butter to the used Ford to the quiet neighborhood, you start to see the threads coming together. This isn't just about money. It never was. It's about a refusal to be defined by anything other than your own internal compass. The person who lives in that modest house, who ignores the trends, and who sets boundaries with their family is doing something revolutionary. They are reclaiming their life from the experts, the marketers, and the social judges. They've realized that the greatest secret of the wealthy isn't a stock tip or a tax loophole. The secret is that happiness is found in the absence of pressure. It's the quiet afternoon where you don't owe anyone anything. It's the freedom to be ordinary in a world that is obsessed with being special. It's the realization that you don't need a big hat because you already have the cattle. And, more importantly, you have the peace that comes with knowing it's enough. We spend so much of our lives exhausted, trying to prove our worth through the things we collect. We think that if we can just reach that next level of consumption, we'll finally feel secure. But the millionaire next door is standing there quietly in a pair of old jeans, telling us that security doesn't come from what you buy. It comes from what you keep. It's a bit of a relief, isn't it? To know that the path to wealth doesn't require you to be a genius, or a celebrity, or a shark. It just requires you to be you. A slightly more disciplined, slightly more patient, slightly more invisible version of you. I wonder, as you listen to this, do you see those invisible people in your own life? Or maybe do you see a version of yourself that's tired of playing the game? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, not about the math, but about the feeling. Have you ever felt that fever to keep up? Or have you found that quiet joy in opting out? Let's talk about it. It's a conversation worth having. And if this video through the neighborhood felt like it gave you a bit of breathing room today, it would mean a lot if you could gently hit the like button or subscribe to join us for the next one. It helps the channel stay as quiet and focused as the millionaires we're talking about. Take a breath today. Enjoy the gap. And remember, you don't have to look like $1 million to be worth a whole lot more. Until next time.